The winter air bit at my cheeks as I hurried down the narrow street, my worn-out sneakers slipping on patches of ice. The restaurant's warm light spilled onto the sidewalk ahead, promising a brief respite from the cold. My uniform, a black skirt and white button-up shirt, did little to shield me from the biting wind, but I couldn't afford to be late again. One more strike and Mrs. Kowalski would fire me without hesitation. I slipped through the back entrance, the kitchen's humid warmth enveloping me like an embrace. The air was thick with the scent of garlic, butter, and expensive wine, aromas that once felt foreign, but had become familiar over the past 3 months. The sounds of sizzling pans and shouted orders filled the space as I shoved my threadbare coat into my locker. "You're cutting it close, Ellie," Marco, the sous chef, called out, without looking up from the vegetables he was chopping with lightning speed. "Sorry," I mumbled, tying my apron around my waist and checking my reflection in the small mirror taped inside my locker door. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, standing out against my pale skin. I tucked a strand of brown hair behind my ear and pinched my cheeks, trying to bring some color to my face. I looked exactly like what I was, a 23-year-old single mother working 2 jobs to make ends meet. "Floor's packed tonight," Dina, another server, warned as she pushed through the swinging doors with an empty tray. "Some big shots from downtown. Mrs. K is on the warpath." My stomach clenched. Big spenders meant potential for better tips, but also higher expectations and less tolerance for mistakes. I needed the money desperately. Lily's daycare payment was already a week late, and the heating in our apartment had been spotty all winter. "Table 12 is yours," Dina added, nodding toward the section near the windows. "The rest of your usual plus a 4-top of suits who look like they eat $100 bills for breakfast." I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and pushed through the doors into the dining room. The gentle murmur of conversation washed over me as I weaved between tables, nodding at the regulars. Gennaro's wasn't the most exclusive restaurant in the city, but it was upscale enough that most of the patrons wouldn't notice if a server disappeared, unless, of course, their wine glass was empty. I approached table 12 with practiced ease, keeping my eyes downcast as I set water glasses before each guest. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Gennaro's. My name is Ellie, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. May I start you with something from the bar?" The conversation at the table hushed, and I felt a peculiar tension settle over the group. I looked up, my rehearsed smile freezing on my face as my eyes locked with a pair of familiar dark ones. My heart stuttered in my chest. Those eyes. I'd know them anywhere. Eyes that had once looked at me with such tenderness that I believed I was the center of someone's universe. Eyes I'd spent years trying to forget. Dominic. He sat at the head of the table, his broad shoulders draped in what I could tell was a tailored suit, even with my limited knowledge of men's fashion. His once boyish features had hardened into sharp angles, a light scar now bisecting his right eyebrow. His dark hair was shorter than I remembered, styled with precision. But those eyes, they were the same. Dark and intense, capable of seeing straight through me. I felt the room tilt slightly, my fingers tightening around the water pitcher to steady myself. It had been 5 years since I'd last seen him. 5 years since he'd disappeared without a word, leaving me alone and pregnant at 18. His expression remained impassive, betraying nothing. No recognition, no surprise, nothing to indicate he remembered the girl he'd once claimed to love more than life itself. The girl who had waited for months for a call or a letter, only to eventually accept that he was gone forever. "Scotch," he said, his voice deeper than I remembered, but with the same slight rasp that used to send shivers down my spine. "Neat." I nodded, struggling to maintain my professional facade as I took the rest of the orders. My hand trembled slightly as I wrote, and I could feel his eyes on me, though I refused to meet his gaze again. The other men at the table were all lean, sharp-eyed individuals who seemed hyper-aware of their surroundings. One man near Dominic kept scanning the room, his hand occasionally drifting to the inside of his jacket. I escaped back to the bar, pressing my hands against the cool marble countertop and drawing in a shaky breath. "You okay?" asked Joel, the bartender. "You look like you've seen a ghost." A ghost. That's exactly what Dominic was. A ghost from my past who had materialized in the worst possible place, at the worst possible time. "I'm fine," I lied, rattling off the drink orders. As Joel prepared the drinks, I glanced back at table 12. Dominic's attention had shifted to a man who was leaning in, speaking to him in low tones. Dominic nodded once, his expression grave. There was a different air about him now, an authority, a danger that hadn't been there before. The way the other men deferred to him, the respectful distance they maintained. He was clearly in charge. What had happened to the boy who'd worked at his uncle's garage, who'd dreamed of opening his own shop someday? The boy who'd kissed me under the bleachers after school and promised we'd get out of this town together. I returned with the drinks, distributing them without making eye contact with Dominic. As I set his scotch in front of him, his fingers brushed against mine. The contact, brief as it was, sent an electric current up my arm. "Thank you, Ellie," he said. My name on his lips sounding like a secret. My head snapped up, and I found him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. So he did recognize me. The corner of his mouth curved up slightly, a ghost of the smile that had once been my son. "Are you ready to order, or would you like more time with the menus?" I managed to ask, my voice steadier than I felt. "We'll need a few minutes," said one of the other men. But Dominic never took his eyes off me. "Of course," I murmured, turning away and feeling his gaze burn into my back as I retreated. For the next hour, I moved through my duties in a daze. I served their food, refilled their glasses, and maintained a professional distance, all while acutely aware of Dominic's presence. Occasionally, I'd catch him looking at me, his expression unreadable. The other servers seemed to sense the tension, giving me curious glances as I moved in and out of the kitchen. By the time they asked for the check, I was exhausted from the effort of keeping my composure. I presented the leather folder to Dominic, who slipped a black credit card inside without even looking at the total. When I returned with the receipt, he signed it with a flourish, closing the folder and handing it back to me. "It was a pleasure," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "You've grown even more beautiful, Ellie." I stared at him, unable to form a response. Beautiful? I was worn down, surviving on too little sleep and too much cheap coffee, my hands rough from cleaning products and dishwater. The word felt like mockery. "Thank you for dining with us tonight," I said formally, stepping back. "Have a good evening, gentlemen." I turned away, only to feel a warm hand encircle my wrist. I froze, looking down to see Dominic's fingers against my skin, his touch gentle but firm. "We have a lot to catch up on," he said, and it wasn't a suggestion. "I'm working," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. His eyes flickered to the clock on the wall. "You're done at 11. I'll wait." It wasn't a request. The authority in his voice, the assumption that I would comply, sparked a flare of anger in my chest. How dare he? After 5 years of silence, he thought he could just walk back into my life and make demands. "I have somewhere to be," I said, pulling my arm free. His eyes narrowed slightly, the first crack in his composed facade. "Somewhere more important than reconnecting with an old friend. Home," I said simply. "To my daughter." I had the satisfaction of seeing genuine surprise flash across his face. His gaze sharpened, and I could almost see the calculations happening behind those dark eyes. "Your daughter," he repeated, the words careful, measured. "Yes." I squared my shoulders. "She's 4. Dominic went still, utterly, completely still, like a predator that had just caught the scent of its prey. The tension around the table thickened as the other men exchanged glances. 4, he said softly. I nodded once, then turned and walked away, my heart hammering against my ribs. I hadn't intended to tell him about Lily, not like this, not at all, but something in me had wanted to shake his composure, to make him feel even a fraction of the turmoil I was experiencing. I finished my shift in a blur, avoiding Dominic's table as much as possible. By the time I emerged from the employee entrance at 11:15, I was exhausted, emotionally and physically. All I wanted was to go home, relieve Mrs. Abernathy from babysitting duty, and curl up beside my sleeping daughter. The street was quiet, a light snow beginning to fall. I pulled my coat tighter around me and started toward the bus stop, only to falter at the sight of a sleek black car idling at the curb. The back door opened, and Dominic stepped out, now wearing a long black coat that made him look even more imposing. "I'll drive you home," he said, gesturing to the open door. Behind him, I could see the outline of a driver in the front seat. No, thank you, I replied, continuing toward the bus stop. The bus will be here soon. Dominic fell into step beside me, his long legs easily matching my hurried pace. It's late, it's cold, and this isn't a safe neighborhood for a woman alone. I do this every night, I countered, refusing to look at him. I've managed just fine without you. He grabbed my arm, forcing me to stop and face him. His expression was no longer impassive. There was an intensity there, a barely contained fury that made me take a step back. 5 years, he said, his voice low, dangerous. 5 years, and you never thought to tell me I had a daughter. The accusation hit like a slap. Tell you? I hissed, anger rising hot in my throat. How was I supposed to tell you anything when you disappeared without a trace? No goodbye, no explanation, nothing. I had no choice, he growled. Things happened that I couldn't control. Things always happen, Dominic, but people who care about each other find a way to communicate. A phone call, a letter, anything would have been better than silence. We stood there, snow falling around us, our breath forming clouds in the cold air. In the distance, I could see my bus approaching. That's my bus, I said, pulling away from him. Ellie, he said, and there was something in his voice, a vulnerability, a plea, that made me hesitate. Please, let me drive you home. Let me explain. I have a right to know my daughter. The bus drew closer. I thought of Lily, with her dark eyes so like her father's, asking questions about him that I couldn't answer. I thought of the heating bill I couldn't pay, the daycare fees piling up, the constant struggle just to keep our heads above water. But I also thought of the man Dominic seemed to have become, the air of danger around him, the deference of the men at his table, the expensive car waiting at the curb. What kind of life did he lead now? What would bringing him into Lily's world mean for her? The bus stopped beside us, its doors hissing open. I had to make a choice. I need to get home to my daughter, I said finally. If you want to talk, it can't be tonight. Dominic's jaw clenched, a muscle ticking in his cheek. He reached into his coat and pulled out a business card, pressing it into my hand. My number, he said. Call me tomorrow. I'll come to you, whenever and wherever you say. I looked down at the card. It was simple, elegant. Just his name and a phone number. No company or title. I mean it, Ellie, he added, his voice softening slightly. I want to meet her. I have a right to know my own flesh and blood. The bus driver cleared his throat impatiently. I clutched the card tightly and stepped onto the bus without looking back. As I sank into a seat, I glanced out the window to see Dominic still standing there, snow gathering on his broad shoulders, watching the bus pull away with an expression that sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't just determination I saw there. It was possession. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake in the small bedroom I shared with Lily, listening to her soft breathing from the twin bed pressed against the wall. Dominic's business card sat on my nightstand, the elegant black text catching what little moonlight filtered through our thin curtains. It seemed to pulse with its own gravity, pulling my thoughts back to him no matter how I tried to focus on anything else. Lily stirred, her small body curling tighter under the worn quilt my grandmother had made. In the dim light, I could make out her delicate profile, Dominic's nose, his stubborn chin. My heart ached with a familiar mixture of love and anxiety. Every decision I'd made since holding her for the first time had been with her well-being in mind. What was the right choice now? Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through the window, and Lily bouncing onto my bed with her usual enthusiasm. "Mommy, it's morning time," she announced, her dark curls wild from sleep. I pulled her close, breathing in the sweet scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Good morning, sunshine. Did you have nice dreams?" She nodded earnestly. "I dreamed about a big castle, and I was a princess." "You are a princess," I said, tickling her sides until she squealed with laughter. Princess Lily of apartment 3B. These morning moments with her were sacred, stolen time before the rush of getting her to daycare and myself to my morning job at the coffee shop. Today, however, there was an undercurrent of tension in my movements as I helped her dress, made her favorite peanut butter toast, and braided her hair. "You're quiet, Mommy," she observed as I tied her shoes. At 4, she was already too perceptive for her own good. "Are you sad?" I forced a smile. "Not sad, baby. Just thinking." "About what?" "About your father. About the life we might have had. About the man he's become, and whether I should let him into our world." "Grown-up stuff," I said instead, booping her nose. "Nothing for princesses to worry about." After dropping Lily at daycare, I took the long route to the coffee shop, needing time to clear my head. The city was coming alive around me. Storefronts opening, delivery trucks rumbling by, early commuters hurrying with their heads down against the winter chill. I pulled out my phone and Dominic's card, my thumb hovering over the keypad. The weight of indecision pressed on my chest. Calling him would change everything. Not calling might be denying Lily a relationship with her father, something I'd always felt guilty about despite the circumstances. Before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed the number and pressed the phone to my ear, my heartbeat thundering in my temples. He answered on the second ring, Dominic Castellano. His voice sent an unwelcome ripple of awareness through me. "It's Ellie," I said, my own voice mercifully steady. There was a pause. Then, "I was hoping you'd call." The background noise on his end suggested he was in a car. "We need to talk," I said. "About Lily." "Lily," he repeated, as though testing the name on his tongue. "She's named after your grandmother." It surprised me that he remembered that detail from our past. "Yes." "When can I see her?" Direct. To the point. The Dominic I'd known had been more patient, less commanding. "That's what we need to discuss. I get off work at 3 today. There's a park near my apartment, Riverside Gardens. I can meet you there at 3:30. Text me the exact location. I'll be there." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice had softened marginally. "Thank you, Ellie." I ended the call without responding, unsure what to say to his gratitude. Was I doing the right thing? The question plagued me throughout my shift at the coffee shop, through spilled lattes and impatient customers. By the time I picked up Lily from daycare, my nerves were frayed. I changed her into warmer clothes at home and wrapped her in her favorite red coat and matching hat. "Are we going to the park?" she asked excitedly. "It's not even weekend. Special treat," I told her, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "And afterward, maybe hot chocolate with marshmallows?" Her eyes, so like Dominic's, widened hopefully. "Extra marshmallows," I promised. Riverside Gardens was nearly empty on a cold Tuesday afternoon. A light dusting of snow covered the playground equipment, and the paths were slick with ice in places. I settled Lily on a swing, pushing her gently while scanning the park entrance. He arrived precisely at 3:30, emerging from the same black car I'd seen the night before. Even from a distance, his presence commanded attention. He wore another impeccable suit beneath his black overcoat, looking wildly out of place among the shabby park benches and faded play structures. He wasn't alone. A broad-shouldered man in a dark jacket remained a few paces behind him, eyes constantly surveilling the area. A bodyguard, I realized with a jolt of unease. What kind of man needed protection in a neighborhood like this? Dominic spotted us immediately. He stood motionless for a long moment, his gaze fixed on Lily as she swung back and forth, giggling. Something passed over his face, an emotion so raw it almost made me look away. He approached slowly, as if afraid of spooking a wild animal. The man behind him maintained his distance, but remained vigilant. "Higher, Mommy! Higher!" Lily called, oblivious to the approaching figures. Dominic stopped several feet away, close enough that I could see the muscle working in his jaw. "Is that her?" he asked, his voice barely audible over Lily's laughter. I nodded, continuing to push the swing. "Lily, honey, I need to talk to someone for a minute. Do you want to go down the slide a few times?" "Yes." She hopped off the swing mid-arc, causing my heart to jump into my throat and race toward the slide with the fearlessness of childhood. "She has your eyes," I said quietly, turning to face Dominic. Up close, the changes in him were even more apparent. There was a hardness to him now, a carefully controlled power that hummed just beneath the surface. "She's beautiful," he said, his gaze never leaving Lily as she climbed the ladder. Perfect. Why are you here, Dominic? Really? I hugged myself against the cold, against the vulnerability his presence evoked. It's been 5 years. His eyes finally shifted to me, dark and intense. I want to know my daughter. I want to be part of her life. Just like that, you reappear and expect to step into the role of father after years of silence? His expression darkened. I didn't know about her, Ellie. If I had... What? What would you have done differently? The questions that had haunted me for years spilled out. Why did you leave? Where did you go? Who are you now, Dominic? He took a step closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. Expensive, understated, nothing like the drugstore brand he'd worn as a teenager. I left because I had to, he said, his voice low with suppressed intensity. My uncle wasn't just running a garage. He was connected to people, powerful, dangerous people. When he died, I was pulled into that world whether I wanted it or not. I stared at him, processing his words. So what? You're some kind of criminal now, I whispered, unable to keep the horror from my voice. His expression remained impassive. I'm a businessman. I protect what's mine. And the man watching us? I nodded toward the bodyguard who remained at a respectful distance. Insurance, Dominic replied simply. My position comes with risks. Mommy, look at me, Lily called from the top of the slide. Both our heads turned to watch her slide down, her red coat a bright streak against the metal. When she reached the bottom, she noticed Dominic for the first time. Her natural caution with strangers warred with curiosity as she approached, stopping behind my legs. Who's that? She stage whispered, peeking around at him. I placed a protective hand on her head, uncertain how to answer. Before I could formulate a response, Dominic crouched down to her level, maintaining enough distance not to seem threatening. Hello, Lily, he said, his voice gentler than I'd heard it since his return. My name is Dominic. I'm an old friend of your mom's. Lily studied him with the frank appraisal only children can get away with. You're wearing a fancy suit like princes in my books. A smile touched his lips, transforming his face. For a moment I caught a glimpse of the boy I'd once loved. Well, I'm not a prince. Just a man who wanted to meet you. Why? She asked bluntly. Dominic glanced up at me, a question in his eyes. I gave a small shake of my head. Not yet, because I've heard you're a very special little girl, he answered, returning his attention to Lily. And I can see that's true. Lily seemed to accept this explanation, her initial shyness fading. Do you want to see me go down the big slide? I'm not scared of it anymore. I'd like that very much, Dominic replied. I watched as Lily ran back to the playground, Dominic rising to his full height beside me. There was a softness in his expression as he watched her that contrasted sharply with the man I'd encountered at the restaurant. She doesn't know about me, he stated, rather than asked. She knows I met her father when we were young, and that he went away before she was born, I said carefully. She's asked more questions as she's gotten older. What have you told her? The truth. That I don't know where you are, but that you were kind and brave, and would have loved her very much if you'd known about her. His jaw tightened. I want to be in her life, Ellie. I want to be her father. I wrapped my arms tighter around myself. I don't even know who you are anymore, Dominic. The boy I knew wouldn't have needed a bodyguard or driven a car that costs more than I make in a year. People change. Circumstances change. He took a step closer, but some things remain the same. The intensity in his gaze made my heart stutter. Like what? Like the fact that I never stopped thinking about you, he said, his voice dropping. Like the fact that seeing you again after all these years feels like coming home. I took a step back, shaking my head. Don't. You don't get to say things like that, not after all this time. His expression hardened again. I had my reasons for staying away. And now? What are your reasons for coming back? Business brought me back to the city, he said. Finding you was unexpected. But now that I know about Lily, now that I've seen her, I'm not walking away again. The certainty in his voice sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the winter air. It's not that simple, Dominic. You can't just insert yourself into our lives because you've decided you want to be a father now. Lily is my priority. Her safety, her happiness. Those come before anything else. She's mine too, he said, a new edge to his voice. My flesh and blood. My daughter. I bristled at his possessive tone. She's a person, not a possession. His eyes narrowed slightly. I want to provide for her, for both of you. The life you're living now. His gaze drifted to my worn coat, my scuffed boots. You deserve better. She deserves better. We're managing just fine, I said stiffly, though the pile of unpaid bills on my kitchen counter told a different story. Are you? He challenged. Working 2 jobs, living in that neighborhood, struggling to make ends meet? That's not the life I want for my child. It's not about what you want, I retorted, anger flaring. You don't get to disappear for 5 years and then dictate how we live. Mommy! Lily called again, waving from the top of the slide. Watch me! We both turned to watch her descend, her delighted laugh carrying across the park. When she reached the bottom, she ran to us, cheeks flushed from the cold and exertion. I went super fast that time, she announced proudly. Dominic smiled down at her, something possessive and tender in his expression. You were very brave, he told her solemnly. Lily beamed at him, then tugged on my hand. Can we get hot chocolate now, with extra marshmallows? You promised. I glanced at Dominic, then back at my daughter. Yes, we can. There's a cafe just outside the park, Dominic said, not a suggestion but a statement. My treat. You don't have to, I began, but he cut me off. Please, he said, and for the first time, there was something like vulnerability in his voice. Let me do this one small thing. I hesitated, torn between pride and practicality. Lily looked up at me with hopeful eyes, and I found myself nodding reluctantly. All right, just hot chocolate. The walk to the cafe was tense, at least for me. Dominic and his bodyguard flanked us, the latter maintaining a vigilant watch of our surroundings. Lily, oblivious to the undercurrents, skipped between us, occasionally slipping on icy patches and causing both Dominic and me to reach for her at the same time. The cafe was warm and inviting, the rich scent of coffee and chocolate enveloping us as we entered. Dominic spoke quietly to his bodyguard, who positioned himself near the door while we found a table in the corner. I helped Lily out of her coat, acutely aware of Dominic's eyes on us, cataloging every movement, every interaction. What can I get for everyone? He asked, removing his own coat to reveal the perfectly tailored suit beneath. Hot chocolate for Lily with extra marshmallows, Lily interjected eagerly. Dominic smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. Extra marshmallows it is, and for you? Just regular coffee black, I said, reluctant to let him spend more than necessary on me. He raised an eyebrow, but didn't comment. Moving to the counter to place our order, Lily watched him go, her head tilted in curiosity. He's nice, she declared. And tall, like a tree. Despite my anxiety, I laughed. Yes, he is tall. Is he your boyfriend? The question caught me off guard. No, honey. He's just someone I used to know a long time ago. Before I was born? My heart thumped painfully. Yes, before you were born. Lily seemed to consider this, her small brow furrowing in thought. He looks at you like Prince Eric looks at Ariel in my book. I opened my mouth to respond, but Dominic returned with our drinks, setting a mug overflowing with marshmallows in front of Lily. Her eyes widened with delight as she reached for it. Careful, it's hot, Dominic and I said simultaneously. Our eyes met over Lily's head, and something electric passed between us. A shared concern, a parental instinct that connected us, despite the years and secrets between us. Lily took careful sips of her hot chocolate, a mustache of foam forming on her upper lip. Dominic watched her with naked fascination, drinking in every detail of her face, her mannerisms, the way she swung her legs beneath the table. Do you like princesses? Lily asked him suddenly. Dominic seemed momentarily thrown by the question. I don't know much about them, he admitted, but I'd like to learn. I have lots of princess books at home, she informed him seriously. Mommy reads them to me every night. My favorite is Brave because Merida has curly hair like me and she's not afraid of bears. That sounds like a good story, Dominic replied, matching her serious tone. Maybe someday you could tell me all about it. Lily nodded enthusiastically. warming to him in that easy way children do when they sense genuine interest. I watched their interaction with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. This was what I'd always wanted for her, a father who looked at her like she hung the moon, but the reality of who Dominic had become complicated everything. As Lily chattered about her favorite stories, Dominic occasionally glanced at me, his expression unreadable. When Lily was distracted by the foam in her mug, he leaned closer to me. "I want to help you, Ellie," he said quietly. "Financially, at least. It's the least I can do. We don't need your money," I whispered back, though it was a lie. His eyes narrowed. "Pride won't keep her warm or put food on the table. Let me do this. For her." Before I could respond, Lily tugged on his sleeve, reclaiming his attention. "Do you have any little girls?" she asked innocently. Dominic's expression softened. No other children. Just me?" She sounded pleased by this prospect. Dominic glanced at me, a question in his eyes. I gave a slight nod. We'd come this far. "Lily," I said gently, "there's something I need to tell you about Dominic." Lily looked at me expectantly, chocolate foam still decorating her upper lip. I reached across the table and wiped it away with a napkin, buying myself a few precious seconds to find the right words. Dominic sat perfectly still, tension radiating from his rigid posture. "Remember how I told you about your daddy?" I began carefully. "How he had to go away before you were born, but that he would have loved you very much if he'd known about you." Lily nodded, her dark eyes, so like Dominic's, growing serious. "You said he was brave and kind." My throat tightened. The boy Dominic had been was brave and kind. The man sitting across from us now was something else entirely, something I couldn't yet define. "Well," I continued, my voice soft, "Dominic is your daddy." Lily's eyes widened, darting between me and Dominic with shocked wonder. The cafe around us seemed to fade away as my daughter processed this revelation. Dominic leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped so tightly on the table that his knuckles whitened. "You're my daddy?" Lily finally asked, her voice small but clear. Dominic nodded, and I saw him swallow hard. "Yes, Lily, I am." She studied his face with new intensity, as if looking for herself in his features. "But you went away." The simple statement hung in the air between them. I held my breath, waiting for Dominic's response, wondering what explanation he could possibly offer a 4-year-old. "I did," he admitted, his voice gentler than I'd heard since his return. "And I'm very sorry about that. I didn't know about you, or I would have come back sooner." "Why didn't you know about me?" Lily asked, the directness of childhood cutting straight to the heart of the matter. Dominic's eyes met mine over her head, and I saw a flash of something like pain before his expression closed again. "Sometimes grown-ups lose touch with each other," he explained carefully. "I had to go far away for a long time, and I couldn't talk to your mom." "I didn't know she was going to have you." Lily seemed to consider this explanation, her small brow furrowed in concentration. "But you're here now," she stated finally. "I am," Dominic confirmed, "and I'd like to get to know you if that's okay." She tilted her head, studying him with that frank, unfiltered gaze that only children possess. "Do you know how to make pancakes? Mommy makes them on special days, but they're always a little bit burnt." A smile touched Dominic's lips, a real smile that softened his entire face. "I can make pancakes," he said. "Good ones that aren't burnt at all. With chocolate chips?" "Definitely with chocolate chips." I watched their exchange with a knot in my throat. This was what I'd wanted for Lily, a father who would look at her with adoration, who would promise her chocolate chip pancakes and mean it. But the gold watch on Dominic's wrist, the bodyguard by the door, the aura of controlled danger that surrounded him, these were not what I'd wanted. "Lily, drink your hot chocolate before it gets cold," I said, needing a moment to collect myself. As she returned her attention to her mug, Dominic's eyes locked with mine. There was a raw intensity there, a mixture of gratitude and something possessive that sent a shiver down my spine. "Thank you," he mouthed silently. I gave a small nod, unsure if I deserved thanks for doing what any decent parent would do. When Lily finished her hot chocolate, leaving a ring of chocolate around her mouth that I carefully wiped away, Dominic insisted on driving us home despite my protests. "It's getting dark, and it's freezing," he said firmly. "Please, Ellie, let me do this." I reluctantly agreed, aware of Lily's drooping eyes and the biting cold outside. The black SUV waited at the curb, its windows tinted so dark they were almost opaque. The bodyguard opened the door for us, his face impassive as we climbed in. The interior was warm and luxurious, the leather seats softer than anything I'd sat on in years. Lily's eyes widened as she took in the spacious cabin, the subtle lighting, the small television screens built into the back of the front seats. "Your car is fancy," she declared, bouncing slightly on the seat. Dominic smiled as he settled beside her. "I'm glad you like it." I gave the driver our address, conscious of how shabby our apartment building would look to someone like Dominic now. The neighborhood wasn't dangerous exactly, but it was far from affluent. Faded storefronts with security grates, apartment buildings with peeling paint, streets that weren't always plowed in winter. As we drove, Lily's initial excitement gave way to drowsiness. Her head began to nod, and before long, she had slumped against Dominic's arm, fast asleep. He froze for a moment, looking down at her with an expression of such naked wonder that it made my chest ache. Carefully, gently, he shifted his arm to cradle her more comfortably, supporting her head against his chest. The tenderness of the gesture contrasted sharply with the dangerous man I'd glimpsed at the restaurant. "She trusts easily," I said quietly. "Like her mother used to," he replied, his eyes still on Lily's sleeping face. The observation stung with its accuracy. I had trusted easily once, trusted Dominic with my heart, my body, my future. That trust had been shattered when he disappeared without a trace, leaving me to face pregnancy and motherhood alone at 18. "People change," I said, echoing his earlier words. His gaze lifted to meet mine. "Yes, they do, but not completely." His voice dropped lower. "Part of you is still there, Ellie, the girl who used to look at me like I hung the moon. That girl grew up," I said firmly. "She had to." He studied me in the dim light of the car, his expression thoughtful. "I want to help you, Ellie. You and Lily both. We've been managing fine without your help for 5 years. Have you?" His gaze was penetrating. 2 jobs, an apartment in that neighborhood, struggling to make ends meet? That's not what I want for my daughter. Or for you. "What I do is honest work," I said, lifting my chin. "I don't need to know what you do to understand it's not." His expression hardened. "You know nothing about what I do." The bodyguard, the car, the way those men deferred to you at the restaurant. "I'm not stupid, Dominic. Whatever business you're in, it's not legitimate. Everything I've built," he said, his voice low and intense, "I built with you and our future in mind. Before I knew about Lily, it was always for you, for us. I wanted to come back to you when I had something to offer, something more than a mechanic's salary and a cramped apartment above a garage. I would have preferred the mechanic and the cramped apartment to 5 years of silence," I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. He looked down at Lily again, his expression softening. "And now? What would you prefer now, knowing what you know?" The question hung between us as the car pulled up in front of my apartment building. The contrast between his world and mine couldn't have been more stark, his immaculate suit and luxury vehicle against the backdrop of my weathered building, with its flickering exterior light and cracked concrete steps. "I want what's best for Lily," I said finally. "That's all I've ever wanted." "We agree on that much, at least." Dominic gently shifted Lily into my arms, careful not to wake her. "Let me walk you up." "That's not necessary. It wasn't a question, Ellie." His tone brooked no argument. He spoke quietly to his driver, then followed me up the crumbling steps, his bodyguard trailing at a respectful distance. I fumbled with my keys, acutely aware of Lily's weight in my arms and Dominic's presence behind me. Once inside the cramped apartment, I carried Lily straight to our bedroom, laying her down gently and removing her shoes. She stirred but didn't wake as I tucked the blankets around her. When I turned, Dominic was standing in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space, as his eyes took in the modest room Lily and I shared. 2 twin beds with mismatched comforters, a small dresser with peeling veneer, walls decorated with Lily's artwork, and a few photographs. It was clean and as cozy as I could make it. but there was no disguising the poverty. I closed the bedroom door quietly and led him back to the main room, which served as both living room and kitchen. The space was small but neat: a worn sofa, a coffee table with one slightly shorter leg propped up by a book, a tiny kitchen with outdated appliances. "Would you like some tea?" I offered automatically, falling back on the manners my grandmother had instilled in me. Dominic shook his head, his eyes still cataloging every detail of our home. I saw him notice the stack of bills on the counter, the patched cushion on the sofa, the single space heater that supplemented the building's inadequate heating system. "This is where you've been raising our daughter," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "This is our home," I replied defensively. "It's small, but it's clean and safe. Lily is happy here. She deserves more." His voice was quiet but firm. "You both do. We have what we need. Do you?" He gestured toward the stack of bills. "Are those all paid? Is the heat reliable? What about her education, her future?" I folded my arms across my chest. "I'm doing the best I can. I know you are." His expression softened slightly. "You're an amazing mother, Ellie. Anyone can see that, but you don't have to do this alone anymore." "What exactly are you proposing, Dominic?" He reached into his inner jacket pocket and withdrew an envelope, placing it on the coffee table. "To start with, this should help with immediate expenses. Rent, bills, whatever you need." I stared at the envelope, pride warring with practicality. "I don't want your money. It's not for you," he said simply. "It's for Lily, my daughter." The way he said "my daughter," possessive, certain, sent a shiver through me. "And what do you want in return?" His eyes narrowed. "She's not a transaction, Ellie. I want to be part of her life. I want to provide for her, protect her, be the father she deserves." "And how do you see that working exactly? Weekend visits, holiday cards, or are you planning to disappear again when your business takes you elsewhere?" "I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice hardening. "Not again. Not now that I know about her. People in your line of work don't typically have stable family lives, Dominic." His jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about my life." "Then tell me," I challenged. "Tell me exactly what you do that requires a bodyguard and a bulletproof car." He was silent for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "I'm in import-export," he said finally. "I manage distribution networks, resolve conflicts between competing interests, ensure products reach their destinations safely. That tells me nothing. It tells you enough." He stepped closer, his presence filling the small room. "What matters is that I'm successful. I have resources. I can give Lily, give both of you, the life you deserve." "At what cost?" I asked quietly. "What happens when your competing interests decide to target your family? What happens when Lily asks what her father does for a living?" "I would never let anyone harm you or Lily," he said, and there was a dangerous edge to his voice that made me believe him. "As for Lily's questions, she's 4, Ellie. By the time she's old enough to understand, things will be different." "Different how?" He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair in a gesture so reminiscent of the boy I'd known that it made my heart twist. "I'm transitioning to legitimate businesses. Real estate, restaurants, investment properties. I've been working on it for the past year. Why?" "Because I always planned to come back for you," he said simply. "I couldn't do that while I was still entangled in certain aspects of the business." I shook my head, confused by the sincerity in his voice. "You disappeared for 5 years, Dominic. If you'd wanted to find me, you could have. It wasn't that simple." His expression darkened. "When my uncle died, I inherited his debts, his enemies, and his position. Walking away wasn't an option, not if I wanted to stay alive. It took years to build enough power, enough security, to even consider reaching out to you. And now? Now I have the means to protect what's mine." His eyes bored into mine. "You and Lily are mine, Ellie. You always have been." The possessiveness in his voice should have angered me, but instead it sent a treacherous warmth through my veins. The boy I'd loved had been passionate, protective, but the man before me took those qualities to a dangerous extreme. "We're not possessions," I said firmly, even as my pulse quickened. "Lily and I are people with our own lives, our own choices." "I know that," He stepped closer still, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat radiating from his body. But can you honestly tell me you're happy with the life you're living now? Working yourself to exhaustion, barely making ends meet, sharing a bedroom with our daughter because you can't afford a bigger place. I didn't answer, couldn't answer, because the truth was that I wasn't happy. I was surviving, pushing through each day for Lily's sake, trying to give her the best life I could with limited resources. The weight of that struggle had been crushing me for years. Dominic seemed to read the answer in my silence. His expression softened, and he reached out to touch my face, his fingertips gentle against my cheek. I should have pulled away, but I found myself frozen, caught in the gravity of his presence. "Let me help you, Ellie," he said softly. "Let me be there for both of you." "How?" I whispered. "How would that even work?" "To start with, a better apartment in a safer neighborhood, enough money that you don't have to work 2 jobs. Time for you to finish your degree, like you always wanted." The offer was tempting. So tempting that it frightened me. "And what about you? Where do you fit into this picture?" "I want to be part of Lily's life," he said simply. "Regular visits, time to get to know my daughter, and with you." He paused, his eyes searching mine. "I want a chance, Ellie. A chance to show you that the man I've become is still the boy you loved. Just stronger. More capable of protecting you and providing for you." "I don't need protection," I said, though my voice lacked conviction. "I've managed on my own." "You have," he agreed. "You're stronger than I ever could have imagined. But being strong doesn't mean you have to be alone." A small sound from the bedroom caught our attention. Lily stirring in her sleep. We both turned toward the noise, equally attuned to our daughter's presence. "She has nightmares sometimes," I explained quietly. "Usually settles back down on her own." Dominic's expression was pained. "I've missed so much," he murmured. "Her first words, her first steps. She started walking at 10 months, I said, the memory bittersweet. Said her first word at 11 months. Book. She's always loved being read to." "Tell me more," he urged, his eyes intent on my face. "Tell me everything about her." So I did. We moved to the sofa, and I found myself sharing the milestones, the challenges, the joys of raising Lily. Dominic listened with rapt attention, asking questions, absorbing every detail as though trying to piece together the years he'd missed. As I spoke, I could feel the walls I'd built around my heart beginning to crumble. This was what I'd always wanted, someone to share the wonder of our daughter with. Someone who found her as miraculous as I did. "She has your stubbornness," I told him, a reluctant smile tugging at my lips. "And your talent for negotiation. Bedtime is always a series of treaties and compromises." He laughed softly, the sound warming the small room. "Poor you. I was impossible to win an argument against, even as a kid." "I remember," I said, nostalgia washing over me. "You talked us into the principal's office after hours to retrieve your confiscated CD player, convinced me it wasn't breaking and entering if we had a good reason. We didn't get caught," he pointed out, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Pure luck," I countered. But I was smiling too, remembering the adrenaline rush, the thrill of our small rebellion. For a moment, it felt like old times. The easy banter, the shared memories, the connection that had once seemed unbreakable. But then my eyes caught the gold watch on his wrist, the tailored suit that cost more than my monthly rent, and reality came rushing back. The ease between us evaporated as quickly as it had formed, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. Dominic seemed to sense the shift in my mood, his expression growing more guarded. "It's getting late," I said finally, standing from the sofa. "I have an early shift tomorrow." He rose as well, his height making the small living room feel even more cramped. "Of course. I've taken enough of your time tonight." Neither of us moved toward the door, caught in a moment of uncertainty. There was still so much unsaid between us, so many questions unanswered. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "That depends on you," he replied, his eyes never leaving mine. "I meant what I said, Ellie. I want to be part of Lily's life, and yours, if you'll let me." "I need time to think," I said honestly. "This is A lot to process. He nodded, though I could see the impatience he was working to control. I understand, but don't take too long. His voice softened. I've missed enough of her life already. I'll call you, I promised. Soon, he reached into his pocket and pulled out another business card, different from the one he'd given me the previous night. This one had a different number scrawled on the back. My private line, he explained. I'll answer any time, day or night. I took the card, our fingers brushing in the exchange. The simple contact sent a familiar warmth through me, a reminder of what we'd once been to each other. Judging by the darkening of his eyes, he'd felt it too. Good night, Dominic, I said, taking a step back. Good night, Ellie. He moved toward the door but paused with his hand on the knob. The envelope on the table. Use it. Not for me, not for you, but for Lily. She deserves better than this. Before I could respond, he was gone, the door closing quietly behind him. I stood rooted to the spot, listening to his retreating footsteps in the hallway. Only when I heard the front door of the building close did I move to the window, peering through the thin curtains to see him stride to the waiting car, his bodyguard falling into step beside him. As the black SUV pulled away from the curb, I turned to the coffee table where the envelope lay. Pride told me to leave it untouched, to prove I could provide for Lily without his help. But practicality and love for my daughter won out. I picked up the envelope, surprised by its weight, and opened the flap. The stack of bills inside made my breath catch. There had to be thousands of dollars, more cash than I'd seen at one time in my entire life. Clipped to the money was a handwritten note. For Lily, and for you. No strings attached. I sank back onto the sofa, the envelope clutched in my trembling hands. The money would solve so many problems. The overdue rent, the heating bill, Lily's daycare fees, the cavity that had been bothering me for months, but I couldn't afford to have fixed. It could give us breathing room, a chance to get ahead, instead of constantly struggling to catch up. But accepting it meant acknowledging Dominic's place in our lives. It meant opening a door I wasn't sure I could close again. I carefully returned the money to the envelope and tucked it into a kitchen drawer beneath the dish towels. I would decide what to do with it in the morning. After a night's sleep cleared my head. Sleep, however, proved elusive. I lay beside Lily's peaceful form, my mind racing with the events of the day. The shock of Dominic's return, the revelation of his changed circumstances, his clear intent to be part of our lives. It was overwhelming. Beneath it all ran an undercurrent of emotions I'd thought long buried. The lingering hurt of his abandonment, the whisper of feelings that had never fully died, the terrifying vulnerability of letting him back into our carefully constructed life. Morning came too soon, bright sunlight filtering through the thin curtains. Lily woke with her usual boundless energy, but today there was a new excitement in her eyes. "Is my daddy coming back today?" she asked as I braided her hair for school. The innocent question caught me off guard. "Not today, sweetie. He has work." "But he will come back, right?" She twisted to look at me, her expression anxious. "He won't go away again?" My heart clenched. One meeting, and already she was attached to the idea of having a father. "He wants to see you again," I said carefully. "We'll figure out when, okay?" This seemed to satisfy her for the moment, and we continued our morning routine: breakfast, teeth brushing, bundling up against the January cold. As I helped her into her coat, Lily fixed me with those perceptive dark eyes. "Daddy has a fancy car," she observed, "and a fancy watch. Is he rich?" The question, so innocently asked, made me pause. How did I explain Dominic's wealth to a 4-year-old? How did I explain any of this? "He has a good job," I said finally, which wasn't exactly an answer. "Better than your job at the restaurant and the coffee place?" I zipped her coat up to her chin, buying time. "Different. Come on, we'll be late for daycare." The day passed in a blur of coffee orders and distracted thoughts. During my break at the cafe, I found myself pulling out Dominic's card, turning it over in my fingers as I considered my options. Part of me wanted to call him immediately, to establish clear boundaries before things went any further. Another part, a part I didn't entirely trust, wanted to see him again, to explore this connection that had so unexpectedly reappeared in my life. By the time I picked Lily up from daycare, I'd made my decision. I needed to be practical, to put Lily's needs above my own complicated feelings. Dominic was her father. He had resources that could give her a better life than I could provide alone. For her sake, I needed to find a way forward that included him. That evening, after Lily was bathed and tucked into bed with 3 stories, she'd negotiated up from the usual 2, I took out my phone and dialed the number on Dominic's card. He answered on the first ring. "Ellie," he said, my name a caress in his deep voice. "How did you know it was me?" I asked, caught off guard. "I've been waiting for your call," he replied simply. "What's on your mind?" I sank onto the sofa, gathering my thoughts. We need to talk about how this is going to work. For Lily's sake, we need clear expectations and boundaries. "I'm listening." I took a deep breath. "I'm willing to let you be part of her life. Regular visits, input on important decisions, but I need to know you're committed to this, Dominic. That you won't disappear again when things get complicated or when your business takes you elsewhere. I told you, I'm not going anywhere," he said, his tone hardening slightly. "Not now that I know about her, not now that I've found you again, and your lifestyle. The danger that comes with whatever it is you're really involved in. How do I know that won't touch her?" There was a pause. Then, "Come to dinner with me tomorrow night. There are things we should discuss in person. I'll send Marco to stay with Lily." "Marco? Your sous chef from the restaurant?" "He's more than that. He's my cousin, and one of the few people I trust completely. Lily will be safe with him." The casual way he arranged things, the assumption that I would agree, sparked a flare of irritation. "I'm not leaving my daughter with a stranger." "Then bring her with you," he countered smoothly. "Either way, we need to talk, Ellie. Face to face." He was right about that much, at least. "Fine," I conceded. "But just me. I'll ask Mrs. Abernathy from downstairs to watch Lily. I'll send a car for you. 8 o'clock? I can take the bus." 8 o'clock, he repeated, as if I hadn't spoken. "Wear something nice. I'll text you the restaurant details." Before I could protest further, he'd ended the call. I stared at my phone in frustration. 5 years gone, and within days he was already trying to take control of my life again. The difference was that now he had the resources to make it happen. The next day passed in a haze of anticipation and anxiety. I arranged for Mrs. Abernathy to watch Lily, called in a favor to switch shifts at the restaurant, and stood in front of my meager wardrobe feeling increasingly hopeless. "Something nice," Dominic had said. The nicest thing I owned was a simple black dress I'd worn to my grandmother's funeral 2 years ago. At 7:30, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, scrutinizing my appearance with a critical eye. The black dress was plain but fit well enough. My hair was clean and falling in loose waves past my shoulders, and I'd applied a light touch of makeup, mascara, a bit of blush, and tinted lip balm. It was the best I could do with what I had. "You look pretty, Mommy," Lily said from the doorway, her head tilted as she watched me. "Like a princess." I smiled at her reflection in the mirror. "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you going to be good for Mrs. Abernathy tonight?" She nodded solemnly. "Are you going to see my daddy?" The question was direct, as her questions always were. "Yes, I am. We need to talk about some grown-up things." "About me?" I turned and crouched to her level, smoothing a hand over her dark curls. "About lots of things, including you. Is that okay?" She considered this, her small brow furrowed in thought. "Will he come see me again soon?" "I think so," I said carefully. "Is that what you want?" She nodded, more enthusiastic this time. "He promised to make pancakes, not burnt ones." I laughed despite myself, pulling her into a hug. "Well, we can't miss out on non-burnt pancakes, can we?" At precisely 8 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Car waiting downstairs." I said goodnight to Lily, thanked Mrs. Abernathy again, and made my way down to the street where the now familiar black SUV idled at the curb. The same driver from yesterday opened the rear door for me, his face impassive. I'd expected to find Dominic inside, but the back seat was empty. As the car pulled away from the curb, I felt a flutter of nerves in my stomach. What exactly was I getting myself into? 20 minutes later, we pulled up in front of a restaurant I'd heard of, but never dreamed of entering. An exclusive establishment where reservations were booked months in advance, and the prices weren't listed on the menu because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. The driver opened my door and directed me toward the entrance where Dominic stood waiting, a commanding figure in a dark suit that made my funeral dress feel even more inadequate. His eyes swept over me, his expression warming as he took me in. "You look beautiful," he said, stepping forward to meet me. "Thank you for coming." I was acutely aware of the eyes on us, the curious glances from other patrons arriving, the respectful nods from the staff. Dominic placed a hand at the small of my back, guiding me inside with a light touch that nonetheless sent warmth radiating up my spine. The maitre d' greeted Dominic by name, leading us not to the main dining room, but to a private area in the back of the restaurant. The space was intimate, a single table set with crystal and silver, soft lighting casting a warm glow over the elegant decor. "I thought we'd be more comfortable with privacy," Dominic explained as he held my chair. As I sat, taking in the opulent surroundings, I couldn't help but compare this to our usual date spots from before. The diner with cracked vinyl booths, the pizza place where we'd split a $10 special, the park bench where we'd shared sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. "This is not what I'm used to," I admitted. "I know." He took the seat across from me, his dark eyes intent on my face. "But you deserve this, Ellie. You always have." A server appeared silently at Dominic's elbow, presenting a wine list. Dominic selected a bottle without consulting it, his confidence both impressive and slightly intimidating. When the server withdrew, he leaned forward, his forearms on the table. "I want to be clear about something before we go any further," he said, his voice low and intense. "Whatever happened in the past, whatever mistakes were made, they're behind us now. What matters is the future, our future. Yours, mine, and Lily's." "It's not that simple," I countered. "You can't just reappear after 5 years and expect to pick up where we left off." "I don't expect that," he said, though something in his expression suggested otherwise. "But I do expect a place in my daughter's life, and I hope, in time, to have a place in yours as well." The server returned with the wine, performing the ritual of presentation and tasting with practiced elegance. When we were alone again, I took a sip of the deep red liquid, its complex flavor a stark contrast to the boxed wine I occasionally allowed myself as a treat. "You still haven't told me exactly what you do," I said, setting my glass down carefully. "What your business entails." Dominic's expression grew more guarded. "I told you. Import-export. Distribution networks, conflict resolution. That could describe anything from Amazon to the Mafia," I said bluntly. "I need the truth, Dominic. If you're going to be in Lily's life, I need to know what we're getting into." He was silent for a long moment, studying me with those penetrating dark eyes. "My uncle was involved with certain organizations," he said finally. "When he died, I inherited his connections, his obligations. I had no choice but to step into his role." "Criminal organizations," I clarified. His jaw tightened. "Yes." The confirmation, though expected, still sent a chill through me. "And now? You said you're transitioning to legitimate businesses." "I am." He leaned forward again, his voice dropping lower. "The restaurants, the real estate, they're all part of the plan. Clean money, respectable ventures. Within a year, maybe 2, I'll be completely legitimate." "If it's that easy, why didn't you do it years ago?" A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Because it's not easy, Ellie. It's dangerous. People in my position don't just walk away. The only way out is to build enough power, enough protection, that they can't touch you or what's yours. And you've done that? Almost." His expression grew determined. "Finding you and Lily, it changes things. Accelerates the timeline. I need to complete this transition now, for your safety, as much as mine." "So we're still in danger," I concluded. "As long as you're in our lives, we're at risk." "No," he said firmly. "I would never let anything happen to either of you. The men around me, the security measures, they're all for protection. Nothing will touch you or Lily while I'm alive. I promise you that. The intensity in his eyes, the absolute certainty in his voice, was both reassuring and terrifying. This was a man accustomed to power, to control, to getting exactly what he wanted, and what he wanted apparently was us. "What exactly are you proposing, Dominic?" I asked finally. "Spell it out for me." A server appeared with our first course, artfully arranged plates that looked more like sculptures than food. Dominic waited until we were alone again before answering my question. "In the immediate term, a new apartment in a secure building, one I own," he said, his tone making it clear this wasn't negotiable. 3 bedrooms, good neighborhood, close to the best schools. "I can't afford—" "You wouldn't pay rent," he interrupted smoothly. "It would be yours." "Well, Lily's technically. I'd put it in a trust for her." I stared at him, momentarily speechless. "You want to buy us an apartment? I want to provide a safe, comfortable home for my daughter," he corrected. "And for her mother." "And in return?" I asked cautiously. His eyes narrowed slightly. "This isn't a transaction, Ellie. This is me taking responsibility for my family." "Your family," I repeated. The words hung between us, loaded with implication. "Is that how you see us?" "Yes," he said simply. "How else would I see you?" I shook my head, trying to clear the confusion his words created. "Dominic, we haven't been together in 5 years. You can't just declare us a family because you found out you have a daughter." "We've always been a family," he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous soft tone I was beginning to recognize as a sign of his deepest emotions. "Even when I was away, even when I didn't know about Lily." "You were always mine, Ellie. That never changed." A shiver ran through me at his possessive words. Part of me wanted to bristle at the presumption. But another part, a part I didn't entirely trust, responded to the raw certainty in his voice. "People aren't possessions," I said, echoing my words from the day before. "You don't own me or Lily. Not ownership," he clarified, his eyes never leaving mine. "Connection. Belonging. The kind that doesn't break, even with time and distance." I took another sip of wine, needing a moment to gather my thoughts. The first course remained untouched in front of me, my appetite diminished by the intensity of our conversation. "Let's be practical," I said finally. "Even if I agreed to this apartment, what then? What would your involvement in our lives look like?" He seemed pleased by the question, as if I'd already conceded the larger point. "Regular visits with Lily, dinner twice a week to start, perhaps a full day on weekends. As she gets more comfortable with me, we can adjust. I'd contribute financially, of course, a monthly amount for her expenses, plus a college fund, healthcare, anything she needs. It was exactly what any child deserved from their father, what I'd always wished Lily could have. But coming from Dominic now, with all his complications, it felt fraught with danger. And your associates? Your enemies? How do we fit into that picture?" "You don't," he said firmly. "My home life would be completely separate from business. The apartment building has top-tier security. My driver would take Lily to and from school. No one would dare touch what's mine." There it was again, that possessive streak that both alarmed and stirred something deep within me. The boy I'd known had been protective, yes, but this man had elevated that trait to something almost predatory. "And us?" I asked quietly. "What exactly are you expecting from me, Dominic?" His eyes darkened, sweeping over my face with an intensity that made my skin warm. "Nothing you're not ready to give," he said carefully. "I understand things are complicated between us. 5 years is a long time, but the connection is still there, Ellie. I can feel it. I know you can too." He wasn't wrong. Despite everything, the years of silence, the anger, the hurt, there was still a pull between us, a dangerous undertow that threatened to drag me under if I let my guard down. "I need to focus on what's best for Lily," I said, diverting the conversation back to safer ground. "My priority has to be her well-being." On that, we're in complete agreement. Dominic nodded toward my untouched plate. "You should eat. The chef here is exceptional." I took a small bite, the flavors exploding on my tongue in a way that made me realize how accustomed I'd become to cheap, hurried meals. Dominic watched me with satisfaction, as if my enjoyment of the food was a personal victory. "Tell me about your work," he said, changing the subject smoothly. The coffee shop and the restaurant. Do you enjoy either of them? I considered the question, surprised by his apparent interest in the mundane details of my life. They're jobs, I said with a small shrug. They pay the bills. Or most of them, anyway. What would you rather be doing? If money wasn't a concern? It had been so long since I'd allowed myself to think that way that the question caught me off guard. I'd finish my degree, I suppose. I said finally. Early childhood education. I had a year left when you found out you were pregnant, he finished for me. I nodded. Childcare costs more than tuition. It wasn't financially possible to continue. It could be now, he said, watching me carefully. With my support, you could go back to school, finish what you started. The offer dangled before me like a forbidden fruit, tempting, but potentially dangerous. You make it sound so simple. It is simple, he insisted. You're Lily's mother, my daughter's mother. Why wouldn't I support you in building the life you want? Because nothing comes without strings, Dominic. Especially from someone in your position. His expression hardened slightly. You think I'd use Lily as leverage? That I'd hold my support over your head to control you? Wouldn't you? I challenged. You're used to getting what you want, used to being in charge. What happens the first time we seriously disagree about Lily, or about anything else? We talk it through, he said, as if it were obvious. Like adults, like parents. And if talking doesn't resolve it? He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those penetrating dark eyes. You don't trust me, he stated, rather than asked. How can I? The words came out more vulnerable than I'd intended. You disappeared for 5 years, Dominic. Not a word, not a sign you were alive. And now you're back, completely transformed, with resources and power and expectations I don't fully understand. His jaw tightened, a muscle ticking in his cheek. I did what I had to do to survive, to build something worthwhile. Everything I've done, every move I've made, was with the end goal of coming back to you, creating a life we could share. You couldn't have known about Lily then, I pointed out. No, he admitted. But I knew about you. I knew I wanted a future with you. Finding out about Lily, his expression softened. It makes that future even more important, even more worth fighting for. The servers returned then, removing our first course and bringing the second. Something with perfectly seared scallops and a sauce that smelled like heaven. The interruption gave me a moment to collect my thoughts, to shore up the defenses that Dominic's words were systematically dismantling. What you're offering, I said once we were alone again, the apartment, the financial support, the chance to finish my degree, it's generous. More than generous. But I need to be sure about your motives, Dominic. Is this about Lily? Or is it about getting what you want? Why can't it be both? He asked simply. I want what's best for my daughter. I want her to have every advantage, every opportunity. And yes, I want you back in my life. I want us to be a family. Those aren't mutually exclusive goals. They are if the first is contingent on the second. His eyes narrowed slightly. You think I'd withhold support from my own child if you rejected me personally? Put that baldly, it did sound absurd. Whatever Dominic had become, I couldn't imagine him punishing Lily for my choices. No, I admitted, I don't think you would. Then what's holding you back? He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. Be honest with me, Ellie. What's the real issue here? The real issue. There were so many tangled threads, fear, distrust, lingering hurt, and beneath it all, the dangerous pull of feelings I'd thought long buried. But as I looked at him across the table, one concern rose above the rest. I'm afraid, I said finally, the admission more difficult than I'd expected. Afraid of the world you live in, afraid of the enemies you've made. Afraid that by letting you into Lily's life, I'm exposing her to dangers she'd never otherwise face. Dominic was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful. When he spoke again, his voice was gentle but firm. Those fears aren't irrational. In my position, I've made enemies. I've taken risks. But I've also built protections, established boundaries. The people in my world know better than to cross certain lines. What lines? Family, he said simply. It's the one unbreakable rule. Families are sacrosanct. To target a man's family is to invite total destruction, not just on yourself, but on everyone connected to you. No one would dare. You sound very confident. I am confident, he replied. Because I've made examples of the few who've tested me over the years. My reputation is clear. What's mine is untouchable. There it was again. That possessive certainty that both unnerved and oddly reassured me. In Dominic's world, being claimed as his was apparently the ultimate protection. And if someone breaks your unbreakable rule? I asked. A coldness entered his eyes, a glimpse of the dangerous man that lurked beneath the polished exterior. Then I handle it, he said simply. Permanently. The implication sent a shiver down my spine. This was the reality of the man Dominic had become. Someone capable of violence, of retribution, of enforcing his will through fear. How did I reconcile that with the father I wanted for Lily? I don't know if I can live in your world, I said honestly. I don't know if I want Lily exposed to that reality. You wouldn't be, he insisted. The apartment, the schools, the life I'm offering, it's all in the legitimate world. Clean, respectable, safe. My other concerns would never touch you. But they'd touch you, I pointed out. And you'd be part of our lives. What happens when Lily is old enough to ask questions? To wonder why her father has bodyguards and bulletproof cars? What do I tell her then? He considered this, swirling the wine in his glass before answering. By then, the transition will be complete. I'll be fully legitimate, a businessman with diverse investments, nothing more. You make it sound so certain. It is certain, he said firmly. Finding you and Lily has only strengthened my resolve. The timeline has accelerated. Within a year, 2 at most, all my interests will be above board. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that the life he was offering could be as simple, as safe, as he made it sound. But years of struggling alone had taught me that nothing came easily, that every choice had consequences. I need time, I said finally. This is all happening so fast, Dominic. A week ago, you weren't even in our lives. Now you're talking about apartments and college funds and family futures. I need to process this, to think about what's truly best for Lily. He nodded, though I could see the impatience he was working to control. I understand. But don't take too long, Ellie. Every day that passes is another day I miss with my daughter, another day you spend struggling unnecessarily. It wouldn't be unnecessary if it meant keeping her safe, I countered. She is safe with me, he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous soft tone again. Safer than she could ever be without me. I protect what's mine, Ellie, with everything I have. The remainder of dinner passed in lighter conversation. Dominic asking more questions about Lily, about her personality, her likes and dislikes, her routines. I found myself sharing stories, drawn in by his genuine interest, his hunger to know every detail about the daughter he'd just discovered. By the time dessert arrived, a delicate confection of chocolate and gold leaf that seemed too beautiful to eat, I'd almost forgotten the tension of our earlier conversation. Almost. I have something for you, Dominic said as the last plates were cleared away. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. My heart stuttered in my chest. Dominic, it's not what you're thinking, he said with a small smile, placing the box on the table between us. Not yet, anyway. With hesitant fingers, I picked up the box and opened it. Inside lay a key attached to a simple silver keychain. The apartment I mentioned, he explained. It's ready for you and Lily whenever you decide. Fully furnished, security in place, everything you'd need. I stared at the key, struck by the weight of what it represented. You already set this up, before even speaking to me about it? I like to be prepared, he said simply. The choice is still yours, Ellie. Take it or don't. But it's there, waiting, whenever you're ready. I closed the box carefully, setting it on the table. This is exactly what I mean about moving too fast. You make decisions, set things in motion, and then present them as accomplished facts. I see opportunities and I act on them, he countered. The building came on the market. It was perfect. Right neighborhood, excellent security potential, close to the best schools. So I acquired it. The top floor unit is ideal for a family, our family, if you choose. The presumption should have angered me, but I found myself more weary than irate. This was Dominic, decisive, determined, accustomed to bending the world to his will. That aspect of him, at least, hadn't changed in 5 years. "I'll think about it," I said, neither accepting nor refusing outright. "That's all I can promise right now." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. "Fair enough." He signaled for the check, which appeared instantly. "Let me drive you home." The ride back to my apartment was silent, heavy with unspoken words and complicated emotions. Dominic sat beside me in the back seat, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from his body, smell the subtle cologne that clung to his skin. His presence filled the space, making the luxurious interior of the SUV feel suddenly too small, too intimate. When we arrived, he insisted on walking me to my door despite my protests. The hallway of my building seemed even shabbier in contrast to his impeccable suit, the elegant restaurant we'd just left. At my apartment door, I turned to face him, the velvet box clutched in my hand. "Thank you for dinner." It was enlightening. "Think about what I said," he urged, his dark eyes intense in the dim hallway light. "About the apartment. About us." "I will," I promised. "I just need time." He nodded, though his expression suggested time was a luxury he was reluctant to grant. "May I see Lily tomorrow? Perhaps take you both to the park again?" The request was reasonable, more reasonable than I'd expected. "She'd like that. She's been asking about you." Something softened in his expression. "She has?" "She's looking forward to those non-burnt pancakes," I admitted with a small smile. "Then I'll have to deliver," he said, his own lips curving in response. 3 o'clock? Same park as before?" 3 o'clock, I agreed. He reached out then, his hand coming up to cup my cheek with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the power I knew he wielded. "Good night, Ellie," he murmured, his thumb brushing lightly across my skin. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me. Part of me, a treacherous, reckless part, almost wanted him to. Instead, he stepped back, dropping his hand as if it cost him physical effort to break the contact. "Good night, Dominic," I whispered. I watched him walk away, his tall figure receding down the hallway. Only when he disappeared down the stairs did I unlock my door and slip inside. Mrs. Abernathy reported that Lily had been perfectly behaved, falling asleep easily after her bedtime story. I thanked her and saw her out, then moved to the bedroom to check on my sleeping daughter. Lily lay curled beneath her blankets, dark curls spread across her pillow, one small hand clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, I could see Dominic in her features, the shape of her nose, the stubborn set of her jaw even in sleep. Looking at her, I knew what my decision would be. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but soon. Whatever complicated feelings I had about Dominic, whatever fears his lifestyle raised, one fact remained clear. He was Lily's father, and he wanted to provide for her, to give her advantages I could never offer on my own. For her sake, I would find a way forward, a path that allowed her to know her father, while keeping her safe from the dangers of his world. As I changed into my nightclothes, the velvet box sat on my nightstand, the key inside representing not just an apartment, but a new life. A life intertwined with Dominic's, for better or worse. A life where Lily would know her father, where we would no longer struggle alone. It was a life filled with unknowns, with potential dangers, but also with possibilities. The possibility of stability, of security. The possibility of Lily growing up with 2 parents who loved her fiercely. The possibility of reclaiming something I'd thought lost forever. As I drifted toward sleep, I found myself remembering the boy Dominic had been, passionate, protective, full of dreams for our future. Perhaps, beneath the hardened exterior of the man he'd become, that boy still existed. Perhaps there was a way forward that honored our past, while acknowledging the complicated reality of our present. Perhaps, in the dangerous world Dominic inhabited, there was still room for love, for family, for the future we'd once imagined together. A future I'd never stopped wanting, even when I'd believed it impossible. Tomorrow, we would go to the park. I would watch Dominic with our daughter, see the father he was becoming, and then I would decide. Not just for Lily, not just for Dominic, but for myself as well. Because after 5 years of putting everyone else first, perhaps it was time to acknowledge what my heart had never truly forgotten. That despite everything, despite the time and distance and changes between us, a part of me had always been his, just as he had always been mine.